When my wife, Sarah, and I bought the old Victorian house on Elm Street, we knew it was a fixer-upper. The real estate agent called it a project with good bones. We called it a nightmare wrapped in peeling floral wallpaper. The previous owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Gable, had lived there alone for 50 years. She'd passed away in her sleep, and the house had sat empty for a decade before we arrived. The most prominent feature, or eyesore, was the wallpaper in the master bedroom. A dizzying pattern of faded roses and thorny vines that seemed to coil and writhe if you stared at it too long. Sarah hated it on sight. "First thing tomorrow, it's coming down," she declared the day we moved in. But that night, we heard it. A faint, dry rustling. Like someone slowly, gently, tracing a finger along the wall. "Probably just mice in the walls," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. The sound was too deliberate for mice. The next day, we started stripping the wallpaper. It was stubborn. The old paste held it fast, and as we peeled it back, a faint, sweet smell of decay filled the room. Underneath the first layer, we found another. And another. The walls were a history of bad taste, layer upon layer of patterns. It was under the third layer that we found the writing. Scrawled in a shaky, frantic handwriting, over and over again, was a single sentence: "Don't let her finish the pattern." Sarah laughed it off. Creepy. Some previous owner had a weird sense of humor. I wasn't so sure. The handwriting looked desperate. That night, the rustling was louder. It wasn't random anymore. It had a rhythm. A slow, scratching shush-scritch-shush that seemed to be coming from the wall right next to my side of the bed. I lay awake for hours, listening. The next morning, I saw it. In the corner of the room, where a strip of the original floral paper still clung to the wall, the pattern had changed. One of the thorny vines, which had previously ended in a tight curl, now appeared slightly longer. It was as if it had grown overnight. I pointed it out to Sarah. "Don't be ridiculous, Mark," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's a trick of the light. We just didn't notice it before." But I had. I was sure of it. We continued our work. The writing appeared again, this time hidden behind a section near the closet. She hides in the gaps between the layers. The rustling at night became a constant companion. It was no longer just a sound, it was an activity. Something was working behind the wallpaper. Sarah started wearing earplugs to sleep, but I couldn't. I was transfixed. A week later, the change was undeniable. The vine in the corner had grown. It now stretched several inches, twisting around a faded rosebud. The pattern was, quite literally, finishing itself. Panic began to set in. I bought a steamer, determined to obliterate every last scrap of that paper. As I blasted the wall with steam, I heard a new sound. A faint, pained hiss, like steam escaping a kettle, but it came from within the wall. The sweet, rotten smell intensified. That night, Sarah finally heard it too. She shook me awake, her face pale in the moonlight. "Mark, listen." The rustling was frantic now. And there was another sound underneath it. A soft, wet, tearing sound. We both stared at the wall. In the pale light, we watched as a section of the wallpaper bulged outward. The paper strained, and the pattern of a rose stretched and distorted. Then, with a soft rip, a long, pale finger, slick with old paste, pushed its way through the paper. It was followed by another. The fingers gripped the torn edges and began to slowly, painfully, pull. A face started to emerge from the gap between the layers. It was gaunt and pale, with skin that looked like old, stained paper. Its eyes were dark, empty sockets. It was Mrs. Gable. Or what was left of her. She wasn't trapped behind the wallpaper. She had been trapped inside it. For 50 years, she had been trying to finish the pattern, to complete the prison she had somehow become a part of. And now, she was almost done. The last thing I saw before we fled the room was her papery lips curling into a faint smile. The rustling hadn't been her trying to get in. It was the sound of her finally getting out.